Do you want it enough to get uncomfortable? Do you want what you're after bad enough to go the extra mile? My name is Bobby Jones, also known as Mr. Brightside, and you are listening to the Extra Mile Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of the Extra Mile Podcast. This is going to be a little bit different today because I am running a solo episode. So episode 9 is going to be solo. It's just me here today. And it's actually fortunate because you guys have reached out to me. A lot of you have reached out to me via TikTok, YouTube, some of the other social media platforms. You've had a lot of questions. We've referenced my story in some of the episodes, but we really haven't dove deep into that. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that, go into it a little bit for you guys, and then I'm going to answer some of those questions. So I'm going to start with a couple of the questions. The first one's actually interesting, and I'm glad that this came up because this isn't something I typically cover in my story anyway. So the question was, why do I go by Mr. Brightside? So aside from my overall positive attitude that I try to maintain, it was a parent at one of my daughter's gymnastics studios that I went to, and of course the name of my company is Brightside, but the name Mr. Brightside never dawned on me. I go into this gym and his parent says to me, every time I see you, I can't help but think of the song Mr. Brightside by the Killers, right? And I know that I must have been living under a rock my entire life, but no kidding, I had never heard the song. So after that, I became obsessed with the idea of the song, the name, and everything like that, and just kept rolling with it. People would call me that anyway, just here and there, and I never knew what they were referencing. So it kind of worked as a decent nickname, right? But then in addition to that, as I started to do more speaking and things like that, man, I thought, wow, isn't this a really good way to spread that positive mindset and the idea that we should maintain a positive mindset? So that's really why I stuck with Mr. Brightside. And if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, that is my handle. It's separated by underscores. So it's underscore Mr. underscore Bright underscore side underscore. So there's a couple more questions and I'll try to break this up as I go through the story. But guys, I want you to know why, I even started a podcast, why I feel it's important for me to deliver my message. And, I think all of that's important for you guys as listeners to understand and know. So if you're not familiar with my story, tune in, pay close attention. The other thing that I always ask when I start to tell my story is please be open-minded, right? A lot of this is going to sound unbelievable because even as I go back through the story, I'm like, what in the hell? How did this all play out? How did my life get to those points? And, it's interesting because oftentimes today I sit across from my office and I look back and I'm like, how the hell did this even happen? And I certainly didn't do it alone. I've got a lot of wonderful team members and a lot of wonderful people around me, and I certainly couldn't have done it by myself, that's for sure. So for those of you who don't know, I grew up in a very poor setting. My family was, I was one of 5. I had older brother, younger sister, and of course my 2 parents, and we lived in a single wide trailer in Magnolia, Delaware. It was very, very broken down, but again, as a kid, you don't really know those things. So I really felt like what I was experiencing was pretty normal. The saying is you don't know what you don't know. And I really didn't know that we were poor or we, didn't have much until, you get to that point in school where people are comparing shoes and that's what determines whether you're cool or not. And so I learned then when I didn't have the nice Nikes or the nice sneakers, that we didn't have much money because I would ask for them and they said we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it. And the reason I emphasize this is that I didn't know is because even without, we had so much happiness. We really were happy. Of course, there were times, low times, but it was very interesting as I look back on my childhood now. Even with so little, we were so happy. And it's one of the reasons why today I'm truly, truly confident. You could take all this from me, and the one thing you can't take from me is my smile. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to find happiness. I'm going to do what makes me happy anyway. So that, the times changed quite a bit when my parents developed a addiction. And I think they had, used drugs. In fact, I do know that they had used drugs before that. But when they really developed a strong addiction, the state of Delaware stepped in. And I remember I was at a church event with one of my neighbors from down the street from us, and we were at this church event at in Camden, Delaware, and they just came in, this state, the social workers and everything came in, and they just took us. And it's weird because your whole life you're like, don't talk to strangers, don't go, especially don't go with strangers. And now I'm being forcefully told to go with strangers. And it was scary. My sister, I remember her, she like ran away at the church, like they had to go get her. And I was a little bit more adventurous anyway. I'm like, cool, let's go see what this other house is all about. And I remember me and my sister on the way to the foster home, the first foster home, we were like, look, let's go act up and be rebels until they just can't take it no more and they'll send us back. That didn't work out. Plus the first family we went to was just super nice and we couldn't do that to them. But we were in and out of foster homes. My brother ended up going with my grandparents, and he was older, a lot easier to take care of, and my grandparents definitely couldn't take on three of us. So my brother went with them, and me and my sister stayed in a few foster homes. We bounced around, and then we ended up getting separated and put into two separate foster homes. And then at some point, the state decided it was a good idea to send us home. And I really don't have an explanation for why, because when we went home, my parents were still in very bad conditions, still had an addiction, and in addition to that, we didn't have any electric in the single wide trailer that we were living in. My parents didn't have a car, job, driver's license, and we had very little food. So I don't really know why we were sent home, but nonetheless we were. We scraped by a little bit like that for a while, and my mom, she actually had been struggling with cancer and some of the recovery of cancer, and she had a medicine prescribed to her that was called OxyContin. If you're familiar with OxyContin, it's probably, and a lot of documentaries say that it's responsible for the opiate epidemic that, and just a lot of overdoses across the nation and a lot of heroin usage as a result as well. So she would take this medicine and she would pretty much shut down. I mean, it would be, hours before we'd get her back from, this comatose state that the OxyContin would put her into. And so it was really kind of difficult because I wasn't being watched, and I was already a little hellion of a kid anyway. So, at about 13 years old, out running the streets, there was a trailer park nearby that I spent a good bit of time in, learning all the wrong things, and I got arrested for the first time when I was 13 years old, and then I was arrested again at 14. It's kind of funny, at that time I was devastated because when I got arrested at 14, I ended up getting put into facilities, detention centers, youth detention centers, and even some youth programs. And all in all, I ended up spending almost 2 years in these youth programs. And what was really interesting now that I look back on that time is I really, truly believe that 2 years saved my life. And what I mean by that is that everybody around me at that time developed strong addictions. Most of the people around me especially had developed strong addictions at that time to cocaine and pills and other harder drugs than what we were doing at the time, which was mainly just weed and marijuana. So I really look back on that time and I think that saved my life, because when I came home, I was being drug tested every 2 weeks. And so I really couldn't do anything. I still got into a ton of trouble, but I didn't develop the addiction. And I truly believe, man, looking back on my life, those 2 years probably saved my life. Because my family has very addictive traits, and they, probably exist inside me. And I'm glad that it was never a problem I had to deal with. One of the things that I also know is that my behaviors, I had to kind of offset all the fun everybody else was having by doing drugs. I would go out and get into trouble, and I would get, tons of adrenaline by, the thrill of doing something illegal without getting caught for it. But of course, when you do that, you end up getting caught. So when I came home, I was about 16 from the 2 years that I had done. And at 17, I was arrested for robbery in the first degree, robbery in second degree. I was 17 years old, but I was charged as an adult. I ended up doing some time on that, and when I did, it was all adult time. It was very scary stuff. I mean, I was probably a month from turning 18, and I was being thrown into adult prison. And when I say being thrown into, I'm responsible for my own actions. I'm the one that put myself there for sure. But I remember my first cellmate when I went into jail was he had 2 life sentences. And, it's interesting thinking about like what could have happened because when you put in situations like that, certain people don't have anything to lose. And it's not that, these are bad people in some instances. Some of them have reformed, but when you have nothing to lose, like truly your actions cannot do anything to you, those people tend to be a little too reckless. And, I look at the situations that I was in. I'm very grateful that, I didn't get put in any compromising situations. God kept me safe during all of that. I ended up coming home, but not before my daughter was born, my first daughter. I met my daughter when I was in prison. That was actually one of the questions that came in too. Does your daughter know you were in jail when she was born? She does know this. I've been transparent with my kids as much as I possibly can. And it was an eye-opening moment, but not enough for me to change my behavior completely. I really wish it was, but it wasn't. And so I met my daughter in August of 2004. I came home in September. When you come home from jail, it's always the same thing. You're like, I'm not going to get in trouble this time. I've learned my lesson. Not this time. I'm not coming back this time. But the reality is like, you know what you know, right? And you're comfortable with what you know. So you end up back into like almost complacency can force you into that spot of comfortability. So I ended up getting back into trouble. I ended up selling drugs, doing what I could, what I thought was the right thing to do to provide for my family. And of course, it's kind of interesting too. Me and my wife, we talk about this today. When I got caught selling drugs, I had actually stopped. I had stopped probably like 2 weeks before that, and it was put away. Like what I had left was put away in a dresser drawer in our bedroom, all the way at the back, and I had stopped running it. And of course, that's when my probation officer decided that was the time to come in and do a home search, and of course they found it. So I was arrested for. It was actually trafficking cocaine, possession with intent to deliver cocaine, and a ton of other charges at that time. I remember at one point I was facing like 21 felonies. And you go in. Fortunately, I've always been blessed with the gift of gab. I've always been well-spoken, the ability to talk quite a bit, and learn, right? So I learned everything I could about law as quickly as I possibly could. And, we call ourselves jailhouse attorneys when we're in there. And I was actually able to negotiate a really, really good plea bargain. And I ended up only doing 6 months. Came home, again, same shit, not going to get in trouble, of course, ended up right back into trouble. So it wasn't until I was up for my 4th felony conviction that things really started to change for me. In fact, it was funny because going into this, I was guilty. I want to be clear about that. I was guilty, but I knew like for some reason, like a light bulb really went off this time. And I was like, if somehow I get out of this, I'm going to do something different with my life. And I knew that it resonated with me. I wasn't speaking it out loud. I wasn't manifesting it real well because I wasn't really discussing it. I knew that, when people are in jail, they always say that things are going to change, right? We already talked about that a little bit. But truly, for the first time ever, I really felt like I was going to do something different. And I really felt like I was going to do something phenomenal with my life. As far-fetched as it seemed at that time, I really felt that way. And there had been other times when I was in prison and I would look out the window, I'd see like barbed wire. I remember a specific time where, I think it was in Georgetown prison at the time in the pretrial, and it was really unfortunate then because it was 4 people per room in a 2-bedroom cell, or a 2-bed cell. And it was really, I was just, so like, as much as I didn't want to accept it, didn't want to believe it, I like truly understood at that moment. I was like, wow, I'm really going to be in jail for the rest of my life, or at the very least in and out of jail for the rest of my life. And I just accepted it. This is it. This is what it's going to be. So to have this moment a couple years later during the arrest of the 4th felony, it was really different. I had just felt, that there was something great waiting for me. So anyway, went to court, my first court hearing, and I knew that they were going to come to me with a plea bargain offer and this and that. And I was really going to do what I could to try to get the best offer. Well, the first plea they came to me with was for 33 years. And I said, what? I'm like, is that, you mean that's the time that I'm facing? They're like, no, you're facing, because it was my fourth felony conviction and I had some deferred sentence inside my violation of probation. Altogether, if I was found guilty, I could do up to 60 years. So the 33 years they thought was a real good bargain for me. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm 20. I think at that time I was like 21 years old or something like that. And I'm like, at 21, like I can't even wrap my head around 33 years, let alone the 60. I can't agree to any of this for sure. So, I spent the next 3-4 months just really working hard, trying to come up with a better defense, trying to come up with a better way to get a plea. And there really wasn't a whole lot of hope. It was about 3 months in when what a really bad situation, a really bad time in my life, very scary time, became even scarier and much more dangerous. I had a cousin who had, in a drug deal gone bad, fired his weapon. He fired a .22 caliber bullet out of a .22 caliber gun, of course, and it hit the gentleman in the chest. It was one shot. The guy did get killed, and my cousin, who was 18 years old, came into the prison at that time with a lot of the victims' family members nearby, and on different tiers and on our tier. And fortunately for him, he was placed 3 doors down from me. And I'm not the biggest guy. I'm not, some Jean-Claude Van Damme or Bruce Lee or anything like that either. I've been fighting my whole life, so I do what I could to protect him, but obviously I wasn't in the best position to do so. What was working in my favor was I knew a lot of people at that time. I had been in for about 3 or 4 months at that time. And so, my very first course of action was to try to talk people down, right? I'm trying to talk people down. Listen, you know what? This isn't going to bring your family member back. This isn't going to bring your friend back. Just know that whether or not you have this issue, you also have this issue with me. And that changed things for some of them. And for other people, it didn't matter at all. My cousin had a target on his back, and they wanted to do everything they could to even the score. And so, we dealt with some issues. We had to fight every day when we would go to Chow Hall, which was kind of across the compound. When they cracked our cell doors, we would kind of have to go back to back and keep an eye out for both ways, because people would come up and sneak you and jump you. And there were a few instances where, our sense of awareness, I truly believe to this day, either saved his life or just, saved him from really getting his ass beat. But there was one time in particular, and I've mentioned it in some of my stories, where I was out at yard playing basketball, and the target really wasn't on me, right? The target was on me by default because I was going to protect him, but nobody was really after me. So he would stay in his cell and try to, keep out of sight, out of mind. And I remember being on a basketball court one day, running up and down the court, and I just happened to hear a group of guys at the end of the court, off the court, say that they're going to run in on the white boy on A tier. And, there's only 3 of us on A tier. It's me, my cousin, and this one old white guy at the end. And, I really didn't believe it was going to be him. So it was like my sense of awareness, like to this day, I'm like, how the fuck did I hear that? Like, how did I hear him down there at that time? And to me, to this day, I really, really don't have an answer. I'm going to just real quick turn my video recorder on over here too, because I'm losing battery for some reason on my camera. So backup, better to have backup, right? So yeah, to this day, I still can't believe that I fucking heard those guys, because I was the very first, when they finished yard, I was the very first person in. I got to my cousin. I'm like, look, man, you got to throw your shoes on, because he was sitting in flip-flops. I'm like, throw your shoes on quick. They're coming right now. By the time I turned around, they were right at the door. And some of them I knew. Some of them kind of retreated because they wanted to catch my cousin by himself. They retreated. Others didn't, and we fought. But to this day, I wonder what would have happened had I not heard that. Things happen for a reason. They always do. And there was definitely a reason why, if my cousin was going to be put into that situation, I was still there. So all this is going on. I'm still hoping and wishing and praying for a better sentence than what had been offered to me by way of plea bargain. And so, I'm doing everything I can, get to court. I've been praying, hoping, wishing, looking at all the law books. Like, there's really no out for me because the victim/witness had been to every court date, haven't been able to get any contact with him. There wasn't anything in the law books. There was no way for me to really get out of it. So I get to court and I didn't have money, so I had a public defender. My public defender was like, you know what, let's do a lineup real quick. Let's grab a few of you guys from the holding cell down here at the courthouse and we'll put you upstairs in the jury box and we'll see if the witness can identify you. And I said, all right, yeah, it's worth a shot. Let's go for it. And then once I got up there and I saw the other people they grabbed, I was like, wow, this is not very fair. Because, there was guys that didn't look anything like me in there. And I was just pretty sure that they were going to pick me. The guy, the witness, the victim who I had had no contact with, I had been praying, hoping, and wishing for 5, 10, 15 years versus the 33 that they were trying to give me. This guy walks in and he looks dead at me and he says, the man that did this is not in the courtroom today. And I went home the same night. So, this part of the story, oftentimes I get pretty emotional. I was able to restrain that today, and that's good because, the real message that I have to deliver is not what I went through that I emerged from. It was how I emerged from it, right? And so now I'm like, shit, I've been talking all this shit about how if I was given another chance, I'm going to do good. I'm going to do something phenomenal with my life. Well, now's the time to cash that check that I've been writing this entire time, right? I've been given a chance. I'm free and I'm going home. And that probably was the second scariest time of my life because I didn't know how I was going to recover. I had 3 felony convictions. I had nowhere to live. Me and my wife now, but at the time, we were not on very good terms. And how could we be? Look at what she was dealing with. My uncle, and big shout out to my Uncle Carl, one of the real solid people in my life from the beginning of my life to now, who just led a great example and was there for me. He let me sleep on his couch when I came home. And it was really needed. I needed that. I didn't have much clothes. I didn't have a vehicle. I needed all the help I could get, but I was willing to put in the work that came along there that was required with it. And so I was determined. But I put in applications everywhere I went. It was I would put in there that I was convicted felon. Nobody would ever call me back. So I decided that, if I was going to get hired, I was going to have to do something a little different than what I had always done. And so what I did was I borrowed a suit off of my cousin and I said, I'm going to just give myself a chance to talk to somebody, which I hadn't had yet because the application's not really speaking on my behalf. It's just a small representation of who I am. So I got a haircut from a guy that lived in the trailer park that I had been in jail with. And he came, cut my hair, and I started showing up to places that I thought might hire me if given the chance to speak to them. And I showed up there and I would say, I'm here for my interview. And, people would look at me like I was crazy. I remember showing up to a retail store and I showed up in a suit and I said, I'm here for my interview. And they said, well, we don't have an interview scheduled for you. And I said, well, no worries. My interview was certainly scheduled for 11 o'clock, which I believed because I scheduled it for 11 o'clock. I was so convinced that 11 o'clock is my interview time that you couldn't tell me no different anyway. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll just have a seat and I'll wait. So it was like 35, 40 minutes I had sat down waiting, and she had gone to the back. An assistant manager came out and kind of peeked his head around the corner and said, all right, yeah, send him back, right? So I'll never forget it. It was a guy named Ron. I went to the back, talked with him, and I was given a seasonal part-time position in their electronics department. And I was like, holy smokes, I did it, right? So for what might mean nothing to most people, getting this temporary part-time position at an electronics department at a retail store, probably meant nothing to nobody. But man, it was like this first step of accomplishment that I had got, and I was like, holy shit! I really felt like I could do this. So I get there. It was a temporary position, right? It was seasonal. So I knew they were going to fire me if I didn't do something to really stand out. And what I was able to do was their TV wall was really bad pictures. It was set up to basic cable. So I went home. My cousin at the time was doing online classes. So I waited till he was done, got on the computer, learned everything I could about setting these TVs up to HD. And then I stayed overnight and set up all the TVs to high definition. I didn't ask for permission. I just did it. And then the next day, I went home. I learned everything I could about the TVs, and came in the next day, and I'd teach the people around me that wanted to learn it, about the TVs, and I'd answer questions for them so that they can make sales too. But we were, selling TVs like hotcakes. They were flying out of the department, and it wasn't long before, it was very obvious that TVs weren't in the store very much, and most people had to come back and wait for trucks and this and that. And the store manager got wind of it and came over and was like, what's going on here? And pretty much everybody in the department was like, well, this guy did all this stuff. And a couple of months later, not only was I given a full-time position, but I was promoted to what they called a customer service manager. And I couldn't fucking believe it. And it was, for me, it was so amazing because I had this sense of accomplishment when I got the job, but then I saw further, and I use this saying a lot in my videos and discussions, but the saying is you go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll be able to see further, keep going. And that's how it worked for me for these accomplishments. For every set of accomplishments I achieved, I could see another level of accomplishment. And so I just kept climbing and kept working hard. And, after 4 years, I was right under salary management. I was running, pretty much the whole back left side of the store. And, I was wearing a tie to work. It was just bizarre. 4 years ago, I was looking at life in prison for the better part of my life. And now I'm wearing a tie. I got a great job, and I have a huge set of responsibilities, right? And so it was just so mind-blowing for me. But it basically reset my framework. It basically made me clearly understand that there was so much more that was possible. And so I kept going. I decided to open a business. And I don't talk about this a whole lot, but the very first business I opened actually was a failure. We started a business in 2011. I was a partner with another guy. And started out, overnight success. We just blew up, did $2 million in revenue the first year. We were on pace for 3 the next. Things started getting out of whack, and I actually sold my share of my partnership to my sales manager. And that's when we started the company that I now have, Brightside Exteriors. And so I saw failure, right? I saw success, and then I saw failure in business, which really helped me because, I think when things go too well, they can really set the wrong set of expectations for you. And so, it was actually, again, kind of going back to the 2 years that I did when I was 14 years old. One of the things that saved my life was having that failure then and having the failure in business right away. Because it would have sucked to have it later on. I had failure in business actually at year 2 of having my own business. So we started Brightside. Brightside was started out of essentially my basement. I was working from my basement office and worked really, really hard. We grew the business. I did have some partners in the beginning, and I was able to buy them out a couple years in. They still work with us, and they're wonderful. One of them is my cousin here and project coordinator for Brightside, and one of them is one of our lead best framer in the state of Delaware. Probably I would put him up against anybody. And I'm very grateful for everything that we learned along the way. But our business was recognized last year as one of the fastest 50 growing businesses in Delaware. I've been nominated Young Professional of the Year twice now. And just numerous accomplishments with the business. Things that not even in my wildest dreams we'd have ever accomplished, and we accomplished it the right way. We've been able to donate 4 roofs. It's a roofing business. We've been able to donate 4 roofs per year to Habitat for Humanity since we started. We've done so much for the community. And we want to. I take this message to the detention centers locally, to different juvenile programs. I work with some of the local police departments to deliver this message, and it's just been phenomenal. It's just been unreal. And when you think that almost 10 years after I was released from prison, I had multiple businesses. I also owned some real estate. But 10 years after I was released from prison, I had been nominated Young Professional of the Year that same year. Owner of a couple businesses. It was like I went from 10 years, in 10 years' time, I went from looking at life in prison to owning multiple businesses, multiple homes, and having been nominated Young Professional of the Year. It was just unreal for me. It just, to me, it's like I wonder if they knew the story at the time, would they have nominated me? What's really funny about that is since that time, I've become transparent about my story, obviously, right? I love it. I felt like I was hiding something from the world, and about 2018 is when I really started being transparent with this story. And when I got the poison out of me, I was able to be such a more genuine version of myself. Like, either hate me or love me, but you're going to do it because you know who me really is. And that was what was really important. Sorry, guys, I got all kinds of notifications going off over here. That's what was really important to me, is like, I want you to know me, like me, or hate me for who I truly am. And listen, not everybody's going to like me. And, there are probably people that think that I shouldn't have a podcast and I shouldn't be giving people advice, right? Because I don't know it all. I don't. But the unfortunate truth for them is I really don't give a fuck what you think. And that, to me, has changed my life. When I got my story out, when I started telling my story, and I just, like, on the small picture, right, in the thumbnail version, I care about what people think. I want the feedback. I want to do better at public speaking. I want to do better to deliver my message. I want to do better as a business owner. I want all of those things. Let me see if I can turn this down. So, that is extremely important to me. But big picture, like, do you think I care that you think I shouldn't have a podcast or this or that or shouldn't be doing that or whatever? No, I don't. I don't care what you think, because I'm going to help people. I'm going to help somebody. It might not be you listening. It might be the next person listening, but I am going to help some people understand that where you are has nothing to do with where you can go. And that's my biggest message, is understanding that the expectations that you currently have for yourself are false and misleading. The limitations that are associated to them are false and misleading. You can do so much beyond what you currently think you're limited to. And guys, I mean, that's the gist of it. There's a lot, there's a lot going on. My life isn't perfect. We have our struggles at the business. We have our struggles, just like anybody else does. But, we're doing what makes us happy. It's really interesting. Life is going to throw you curveballs. I debated on talking about this, but, in going transparent and telling the story and getting the poison out, I learned recently, my brother just had his first son. It's our first, boy in our family. We've got, out of 7 grandchildren, we all have girls. And when I say we all have girls, I have 2, my sister has 2, my cousin has 2, we all have girls. And then my brother, who's the oldest of all of us, just popped out a boy, little Jax. Love that boy. Anyway, we also learned that our estranged sister, who has struggled with addictions and things like that as well, just had a little baby girl. And in fact, it was 2 days separated from my nephew being born. It was in custody of the state recently, and we're doing everything we can to get her. But, the thing is life throws curveballs at us, right? Doing the right thing is just important. And doing the right thing isn't the easy thing, right? And when I use phrases like "things happen for a reason" throughout my story, I feel like, you can't just use that phrase when things are convenient, right? You can't just use that phrase when things are going well, or you can't just use that phrase when it's convenient for you. Things happen for a reason, and as a foster kid, I can't let my family member just go through it. So we're doing everything we can, and hopefully we'll have her with us soon. We'll keep you guys posted on this. I think it's a really cool story, and I think it'd be kind of cool to follow her climb. So I'll keep you guys posted on that one. Listen, I'm going to get back into some of the questions that were posted here on social media. So I already said, does your daughter know you were in jail? Yes, I've been very, very transparent with her. She knows, and both of them. We have a younger daughter now too, who's 11, and she knows the story too. What did I do to go to jail? Kind of covered that in the story. They weren't victimless crimes, and I do have plenty of regrets about, the people I hurt and things like that along the way. But I don't have regrets about the way my life played out. There are certain things that happened to me that just happened to me for a reason. Like I said, when I was 14 and avoiding addiction, I really, truly believe I avoided addiction by going to prison when I did, or going to the juvenile facilities when I did. This one's a good one. What made you start a roofing business? So this one's pretty funny because everybody's like, listen, if I'm going to start a business, it's damn sure not going to be roofing. But what was really interesting about this is I had gotten a job in sales at one point with a roofing business. And so I knew a lot about it. I was good at that too. And, it was something I knew a lot of. But ironically, and I talk about this, I think I talked about this on episode 7 or 8 with Glenn Fidel. I've never installed a single shingle in my life. Yet this company installs about 190 roofs per year. I know everything there is to know about roofing. I knew it could be a vehicle for success. And I want that to be clear. Like, you want to do things that you like. I like to serve, right? So my way of serving the community, right? We've donated 4 roofs per year since we started, was this. It was just my shortcut through the woods. Could I come up with something from the ground up and reinvent the wheel and come up with something? Perhaps, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes we can just take what is existing as a service or a product and just improve on it. And that's what we did. We just took a company or a service that nobody really liked. We added the name Brightside to it, right, to kind of put a positive spin on something that nobody likes to do. And the business really climbed. Again, did 197 something roofs last year. And that's not to mention the other stuff that we do. But I'm really, really proud of the team that we have. I'm really super proud of the team. Just an incredible group of guys and girls, and it's been awesome. The business grossed $3 million the last couple of years, and we're looking to hit 4 this year. So again, this isn't some huge mega company or anything like that, but it's far more than I ever expected from myself in my lifetime. So this is something that I think is really important for people to understand and for people to get. Do you still have contact with people from back when I was in trouble? Gosh, guys, sorry about all that noise. Yeah, the trouble that I got into and the people, I actually still communicate with my cousin who is in prison. He did get 30-something years. Sorry about that, guys. That was really loud. I'm going to just throw that down there. And he I think has like 13 left, and I communicate with him often on that. Some of the people, again, you grow apart. You do things different with your life, and that's what really separates you when your interests change and things like that. But it's really important, guys, to understand that whatever your limitations are, whatever you think is holding you back right now, man, it's just usually not true. It's an excuse that we make because where we are is maybe not the best, but it's comfortable. It's what we know. And, if we just get comfortable in the spot and we don't try, we won't see any failure. So that won't hurt us, and it won't, hurt our image, and we won't, what? The only person you should care about, right? Besides, obviously if you have family and you have responsibilities, but at the end of the day, you need to care about what you think of you, right? Oftentimes people say to people that are ready to start a business, don't do that, don't take that leap, do what's comfortable, do what's stable and safe, right? And it's oftentimes because those are their own fears that they're trying to project onto the next person. The question I have to ask you is, are your fears holding you back right now? Because if they are, become afraid of that. If you want to embrace fear, be afraid of not trying. That's what scares me to death, is not trying. Guys, this Extra Mile podcast is something that I'm trying to keep consistent for you guys so that you have, an inside look at what going the extra mile can do for you in your business or in your life. And, extreme level of self-awareness can help you understand where you need to apply the extra mile mindset. For me, putting that suit on and showing up to a business that I hadn't even applied to and damn sure didn't have an interview scheduled, that was my way of going the extra mile, right? When you go the extra mile and you see the results from it, it's like this mind-blowing, eye-opening moment where all you want to do is go the extra mile in all things that you do from that point forward. And when you have that kind of mindset, the fears and limitations that you have just go away. They literally just disappear, and then you'll look back so angry that they were even there in the first place. Like, it is so mind-blowing to me that I let my own self-limiting beliefs create and limit, resist, hold me back for so long. So long I let my own self-limiting beliefs, the fact that, everybody around me is doing crimes and committing crimes and doing drugs and doing this and doing that. And so therefore, this is what I should do. I shouldn't go above and beyond. I shouldn't go the extra mile. I shouldn't expect anything more from myself than that. Guys, go the extra mile. Go the extra mile for you. You deserve a better version of you. Guys, thanks for tuning in to episode 10 of the Extra Mile podcast. Really love all of you. Thank you for your support. Thanks for tuning in each week. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time on the Extra Mile podcast. Thanks, guys.